Welcome back, and wasn't that a lovely interview? And we've got another one coming up right now. We are going to be hearing from the Moonsighted MQP team, and the amazing interviewers for them are going to be Phil Fogerite and Emma Lowry. So yeah, let's get right on into it.
That's good. Thanks, guys. So it was a lot of fun playing your game. Got to get pretty far through it, and it was beautiful, really atmospheric, all sorts of really great features, and was very quickly getting a narrative story from it. Let me just ask, like, kind of a typical interview question. What was the most kind of challenging technical thing that you guys ran into, and how did you overcome it?
I guess the big thing that kind of underscored the entire project was the fact that we had to kind of do the whole thing in 7 weeks.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like fast tracking with like making sure we were able to like know how much we needed to do, like cutting anything that like we didn't think we were able to do, and just kind of getting that all to work.
Development skills.
Yeah, exactly.
The timing of it was always definitely something we always had to think about. Because of how like short of a time we didn't have time to like really think things over, test things. We had to be like really short and decisive with some of our actions and some of the features we were including and excluding.
Yep.
And that also meant that with the narrative, we had no time to test it really, and we had to prioritize getting the most key pieces in, and so like it could come off as failure. That.
I thought the narrative was awesome. I thought it was delivered like so nicely through the environment and through character dialogue and all that. So like maybe you could tell us a little bit about your process for that. Like how did you guys make those decisions, how you wanted to tell the story, who was going to tell us the story, stuff like that.
So for the narrative, I think what we wanted is we wanted 3 like discrete zones, different levels, and then we wanted it so that the different NPCs would just have dialogue that would swap out. And to make this easy, we had one giant like master file script, so all of us could write the entire thing like play, and scene by scene, interaction by interaction, so that we could, when each time you would destroy like another crystal core and the environment would degrade further, everyone's dialogue would become a little bit more like intense, a little bit more opinionated about what was happening, what as a character you were doing. And through that, we found that the players that actually went out to all the NPCs and read through all the dialogue really understood what was going on and what was happening in the gameplay.
Awesome. That's great. So it sounds like you guys came up with a system for kind of collaborating, writing some of the narrative and dialogue. Thinking about this organization, what was something that you came across that was an organizational challenge? Is that something that is that you started out doing, or is that a process that you kind of fell upon after
I
trying
think
things out?
it was a process. So we all worked on games in the past. I think we all had experience with what it's like making dialogue in different scenes. When you actually have to like be in the Unity scene, like click on the NPCs and like go into the inspector and type things out. It's really hard and fragmented to like try and track down where you put all those NPCs. So I think we learned from those past games, and for that reason, that's why we put it in one file. And I had a tool earlier that all of us were inspired by, and then to work on more so that we could push it further for our purposes.
Something I really want to talk about that like stood out to me instantly was just like the atmosphere and the visual style that you guys had going. Like I stepped into it and I was like, oh, this world is complete and it's neon and it's complete and it's like I felt like it was
music.
Yeah, the music even was great and it felt really cohesive. And very like distinct, like that whole aesthetic that you guys kind of put together. What was like your inspiration for that environment and that style?
Yeah, so I think in terms of just the style, I think it was something that we wanted to do sort of like semi-cartoony, like stylized kind of thing, just sort of from the beginning. And then a lot of some of the aesthetics came from our like the theming that we were trying to do with a lot of it was like this slant towards environmentalism and kind of preserving nature. So a lot of the aesthetic kind of came out of that. Where, like, we designed the environment around how like we would be impacting it through gameplay, that kind of thing. And yeah, we just kind of made stuff that I think overall was a big part of it. We're like, okay, we want like some mushrooms, we want some crystals in here, and then we kind of just figuring out whatever the best.
I think we wanted to make sure that since it was like in a dark cave setting, that we had a lot of things that like gave off light or glowed. So a lot of the reason that like the game is very like neon colors and stuff, generally dark background, it's because we wanted to have interest be glowing and have lights be like showing the path.
Big thing with having things that like lit up was with having the characters being moths. Like one of the things we were going for was the idea of like moths like being attracted to light, but like usually against their own health, in many ways. So that kind of helped like solidify that concept.
Yeah. So you came across that for technical as well as like slick design reasons, having lots of opportunities to draw the player's eye and use it for level design and everything. One thing that stood out to me is that I immediately could tell that I put a lot of effort into the level design, bringing the player to look at where the right places as they're going through, who to talk to, where to go in the level. I never found myself getting lost. I noticed the points where, there were the tips on the runestones. All of that kind of stuff was definitely well done, and I appreciated put so much into that. Was that a collaborative effort as well, or was that were there different levels that people had, or passes that you all did together?
That was very collaborative, actually. So we have 3 different zones, and I remember like very distinctly in our like last week of Charlie made a lot of like really good like cave building kits, and then the rest of the 3 of us like made a tunnel. Each of us made like a tunnel, and then went through afterwards to check on like the mushrooms and the point lights, and then finally we added the more stones at the end of it. And so it was a very collaborative effort. We were all like checking each other's levels and played testing each other's little tunnels to see how it played, and then made changes accordingly.
Awesome. You mentioned the cave building kit. So how modular did you get with those environments? Because I had no idea. I thought you just made that all like by hand, like like it was really seamless. So I'm wondering, how did you break down that modularity to make those caves work so well together?
Yeah, so I think the cave kit was like around 6 or 7 pieces total. So that was like 2 different floors, a single wall, a pillar, and then like a couple other things like some rocks and like some and so the big thing with that was like recognizing when that might get repetitive, and like seeing a lot of like the same repeating patterns over and over again with like when we have it in one wall, for instance. So a lot of it was like getting it to be kind of visually interesting in its own way, where like there were a lot of like little lines and parts going into each model. And then I think the other part was like making each thing like really chunky because like each piece was sort of like very like rounded and had like a lot of extra mass to it. It was really easy to just sort of slot them together, and it just looked like different chunks of rock kind of sitting inside of each other. So yeah, kind of planning it about that way, like we were able to like get a lot of like variation with like the actual environments using just those 2 pieces.
It's awesome.
So you mentioned that there wasn't a whole lot of time for play testing, focus testing at all. In any testing that you did do, was there anything you came across that was an interesting discovery that made you change something about your plans?
Mainly, with regards to movement, this is something that we had to test like multiple times over and over again, because especially at first, something we didn't necessarily realize was that the camera placement was too low, meaning that when people had to like move down for certain jumps that were like jumping down, they could actually see where they were going and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of stuff to do for camera placement, and also just like speed of the ball, like the height of the jump, like late action stuff, all of that.
So kind of just like a final question. I think we have time for one more. Where do you guys see this going in the future? Do you want to continue working on it?
Yeah, I think we've been asked that a lot, and I think definitely I think the goal is to like go for at least like an itched or Steam release. The only thing is that there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done on the game still. There's a lot of things that are like we've been staring at for the last few months, having not like been able to work on it. I'm like, okay, these are some things that we need to like add to like get this to like a much more playable state. But I think honestly, like there's not a huge list of things. I think there's like a few solid ones that we need to do, and then once those are in, it could be shown to to something, to some platform. I think that would be pretty cool.
That's awesome. Very cool.
It comes across as something that you guys put a lot more time into than you actually had. It's very impressive. You were able to do the team size.
Yeah, it's 7 weeks. That's wild. That's great.
All right.
Thank you.